This week, a sudden announcement from a Chinese startup sent a real measurable ripple through global markets. Not a rumor, not speculation. The Nasdaq actually dropped on the news. While attention has mostly been on U.S. tech giants racing each other, a Beijing-based startup called Moonshot AI just released a massive new model that's forcing investors to ask an uncomfortable question. Is the hundreds of billions of dollars U.S. companies are pouring into AI infrastructure actually buying the lead everyone assumes it is? Today, we're breaking down the Kimi K3 model, the specific and genuinely serious accusations of data theft swirling around it, and the two radically different national strategies the U.S. and China are betting on to win this race. At the World AI Conference in Shanghai this past week, with President Xi Jinping himself opening the event, Moonshot AI unveiled Kimi K3. The numbers: 2.8 trillion parameters, a 1 million token context window, and native visual understanding. Moonshot is calling it the world's largest open source model, and multiple independent outlets have confirmed that claim holds up. Now, here's where I want to be precise, because a lot of coverage oversimplified this. Moonshot itself openly admits K3 still trails the very top proprietary models, specifically Anthropic's Claude Fable 5 and OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Sol, on overall performance. This is not a model that beats everything, but on specific benchmarks, particularly coding and complex agent tasks, K3 reportedly topped leaderboards within 24 hours of release, beating out several frontier models. And here's the context that makes this genuinely notable. Chinese firms are still working under real hardware constraints, with limited access to NVIDIA's most advanced chips due to export restrictions. A model this large, built under those constraints, and then given away for free as open weight, is exactly the kind of move that rattles an industry built on the assumption that raw compute equals an unbeatable lead. This is where the story gets genuinely contentious, and it's worth being specific rather than vague about it. Back in February 2026, Anthropic publicly accused three Chinese AI companies by name, DeepSeek, Moonshot, and Minimax, of what it called distillation attacks. According to Anthropic, these companies created roughly 24,000 fraudulent accounts to funnel over 16 million conversations through Claude, systematically extracting its outputs to train their own competing models in direct violation of Anthropic's terms of service. And there's a specific piece of evidence that went viral around this exact release. In at least one documented conversation, Kimi K3 reportedly identified itself as Claude when asked, a strange, telling glitch that fueled suspicion its training data leaned heavily on Anthropic's own model outputs. China's government has rejected accusations of improper conduct, and it's worth noting this isn't a one-sided fight. Billionaire investor Chamath Palihapitiya publicly pushed back on the U.S. labs themselves, arguing that OpenAI and Anthropic have limited standing to complain about their outputs being scraped, given that their own frontier models were built in the first place by scraping copyrighted human writing off the open internet without permission. Whichever side you find more convincing, the effect on markets was immediate. JP Morgan strategists explicitly described the reaction as fears of a DeepSeek 2.0 moment, a reference to last year's trillion-dollar tech sell-off triggered by a similar Chinese model. This time, the Nasdaq dropped roughly 1 to 1.5%, with chip stocks leading the decline, as investors openly questioned whether the massive capital being spent on data centers and semiconductors can be justified if a Chinese lab can match key benchmarks for a fraction of the cost. Strip away the specific model, and this story is really about two fundamentally different national bets. China is running a centralized state-coordinated strategy. Under its AI Plus initiative, Beijing is pushing AI integration systematically across manufacturing, logistics, education, and government systems, while positioning itself as an AI partner to developing nations, offering training and collaborative frameworks to build influence over how AI gets governed globally. The US, by contrast, has leaned almost entirely on private sector competition, with regulation historically lagging behind. That's now starting to shift. Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis just published a proposal this month calling for an independent standards body modeled directly on FINRA, the organization that polices Wall Street, to test the most powerful frontier models before release. Separately, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has floated a similar idea: an independent, industry funded agency to vet AI safety, building on an executive order that already created a voluntary 30-day pre release review process focused on cybersecurity risk. Notably, this isn't a fringe idea. Reporting suggests Hassabis, OpenAI's Sam Altman, and Anthropic's Dario Amodei are now showing more alignment on the need for independent oversight than they were even a year ago. The real open question isn't whether they agree in principle. It's whether any of this has real enforcement power once it exists. Whether that happened through legitimate innovation, borrowed insight from distillation, or some mix of both is still being argued out in public right now by the people who built these systems. Do you think China's approach, fast, state-coordinated, and unbothered by the distillation accusations, will outcompete the U.S.'s private sector model in the long run? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more breakdowns on where this goes next.